There's a secret to mastering weapon builds in Battlefield 6 that most people miss. Everyone focuses on attachments, recoil, optics, meta setups, but the most important decision happens before the build even starts: choosing the correct weapon. And once you start viewing weapons the way the developers designed them, the Battlefield 6 weapon design starts making a lot more sense. Every gun in this game is a tool designed for a specific job, at a specific range, for a specific type of engagement. Think about it like this. If you're in a garage and need to cut a piece of wood, are you grabbing a hammer or are you grabbing a saw? And the Battlefield weapons work the exact same way. Some guns are built for aggressive, close-range pressure, some dominate mid-range fights, and some offer a balanced variety of uses. So in this video, I want to show you the most intuitive way to think about weapon building by teaching you how to identify what I call the weapons green zone, the range where a gun performs at its absolute best. A common mistake players make is trying to force the wrong gun into the wrong role. You can have a perfect build on paper and still end up with a gun that feels inconsistent with your playstyle, because the issue isn't always the attachments, it's the weapon itself. This is why I created the phrase for my build guide videos: define your playstyle first. Not just for correct attachment selection, but for correct weapon selection. Because attachments are most optimal when they complement the weapon's green zone. And here's the part most players miss: not every weapon is what it appears to be at first glance. Because the developers actually leave clues inside of every weapon if you know how to read them. And one of the clearest places to see this is in the weapon's base stats. Take precision, for example. Think of it as a rough indicator of how far you can accurately spray before spread starts to take over. So a gun with 31 precision can feel accurate to around 31 meters or so. But precision alone doesn't define a gun's role. High rate of fire weapons, usually above 800, tend to feel best in chaotic, close-range fights. They reward aggressive pushing and fast reaction times. Meanwhile, medium fire rates around 680 to 780 usually feel more controlled, more consistent, and easier to shoot in mid to long-range fights. So when you start combining these stats together with handling, reload speed, and bullet velocity, you begin to see the true use case of every weapon, the way the developers designed it. But what I'm about to show you is the single most important factor to determine where a gun performs best. Once you start reading weapons through their stats, you'll begin to notice a pattern. Every gun has a damage profile, a graph that displays damage over distance. Through this graph, we observe where the weapon is naturally strongest, the range where recoil, fire rate, TTK, and other stats come together most efficiently. This is what I call the weapon's green zone. It's the environment the gun was designed to thrive in. But outside of that zone, some weapons may start to feel unusable or just outright weak, because you're forcing guns into fights they weren't designed to win. Remember earlier when I said you always want to use the right tool for the job? Well, let me show you some examples. Let's start off with the NVO. On paper, it's an assault rifle with a lower rate of fire. So naturally, most players build it for traditional AR style fights, but if we look at the weapon's green zone, the NVO starts telling a completely different story. Between 0 and 8 meters, the NVO kills in just 183 milliseconds. That's the second fastest assault rifle TTK in the entire game. But there's a massive catch. Once you move beyond 8 meters, the TTK falls off to 275 milliseconds, where it starts getting outclassed by many of the rifles you'd normally expect to dominate in that mid-range. In other words, the NVO doesn't reward you for playing it like a traditional assault rifle. It rewards those who play it in close range. And this becomes even more obvious when we compare it to an actual SMG. Let's take the SGX. Great handling, rate of fire, extended mags, everything you'd expect for a close range SMG. But here's the surprising part. Although it's an AR, the NVO is actually better. The NVO is at 183 millisecond, the SGX at 216. If our goal is to simply win close range fights, which is the purpose of an SMG, the NVO does a better job at that. By the way, in 0 to 8 meters, the NVO has a better TTK than 75% of the SMGs in this game. And this is exactly why understanding the green zone matters. The green zone gives us that build IQ. And once we know where the green zone is, choosing attachments becomes easier. Because now we're no longer guessing. We're building around what the weapon was designed to do with 100% confidence. Another example, let's take a look at the RPK74M LMG, because this weapon teaches an important lesson. The fastest TTK range isn't always the weapon's green zone. Sometimes you have to look deeper. If we only looked at the damage profile, we'd assume the 74M's green zone is from 0 to 20 meters because that's where it is the fastest. Seems pretty straightforward, right? But this would be a massive mistake and incorrect. Because the green zone isn't always where a gun's TTK is lowest, it's also where it performs the intended job better than its competition. And for the RPK74M, that job isn't close range fighting, it's long range control. So we need to compare it to the other low recoil long range LMGs in the game, the KTS 100 and the RPKM. At first we see the 74 tie with the KTS, while the RPKM beats them all. But at 21 meters, the KTS falls off, and although the RPKM is still winning, it's only 4 milliseconds faster than the 74, which is practically a tie. But then something interesting happens at 75 meters. The 74M becomes the fastest killing long-range weapon out of the pack, and this completely changes how we identify the green zone for this gun. The green zone is where the weapon fulfills its purpose as a tool most effectively. For me, that's roughly 40 meters and beyond, but on paper, it's about 75 meters and beyond. And that's the real lesson here. Finding a green zone isn't always about identifying where the weapon kills fastest. Sometimes it's about identifying where the weapon outperforms its direct competition. And ultimately, that's the entire purpose of this video. So next time you're starting a build, ask yourself, what job was this tool designed to do? And then identify that green zone. Because once you start thinking this way, Battlefield 6 weapon balance starts making a lot more sense. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like and subscribe. I put a lot of work and effort into teaching you guys the most intuitive secrets in Battlefield 6. Thanks for watching.